Welcome to the Social Engineer Podcast, the SC Etc. series. This is episode 204. I'm Chris Hadnagy, CEO and founder of Social-Engineer LLC, the Institute for Social Engineering, and the Innocent Lives Foundation. And I've been hosting this podcast since 2009. And my trusty co-host for this series is none other than the native Rhode Islander and very Irish, Patrick Laverty. Nice to have you here, Patrick.
Thanks, Chris. It's so great to always be here. My name is Patrick Laverty, Senior Team Lead here at Social-Engineer LLC, where I get to work with a team of 4 professionally certified social engineers doing all kinds of fun engagements, phishing, vishing, smishing, every other impersonation I think we talked about before.
We did.
So yeah, it's pretty awesome.
I thought you were just going to stop at certified, like certifiable, but
right.
I'm glad you didn't. I'm glad you made a difference there.
We need to clarify.
Yeah. Hey, if you're looking for anything to do with social engineering, like let's just say your organization right now is dealing with vishing. And the reason I bring that one up is because there was over a 580% increase in vishing attacks across this country and globally last year. So if your organization is dealing with the increased and phone-based attacks and you're wondering, what can we possibly do? There's no firewall for our phone. And you're wondering how you can protect your people or how you can make them more aware of these attacks, head on over to social-engineer.com. You should check out the services that we offer, the things that we offer over there that can help you be more aware and help your employees be more aware to constantly combat the increasing number of social engineering attacks. And also for all of you who have been pinging us about our training schedule, I am very proud to say finally, we did it. It's up on the website. Not only that, but we changed everything. I'm really excited. Well, okay, we changed the names of our course. We combined 2 courses and we created a course path that can help you become a fully licensed, certified. Should I say licensed? No, certified, just like the team that Patrick works with, Social Engineer. So we have a foundational application of social engineering, which is the old APSE course in July and here in Orlando. And then we have another one over in Europe coming in September. The dates, the actual exact dates and the locations are on the website. Now, we have our new course, the practical application of social engineering, which combines OSINT and active live phishing and vishing against real live targets. Yes, you heard me right. This isn't a joke. Real live targets are involved in that class. And that first one will be virtual in June. And you're going to see that on the website. Our master's level class, all the invites are out for that now. So if you're one of the lucky ones who came through our classes before, you should have that sitting in your inbox. And we are working on a brand new course, which is the psychological principles of a psychological application of social engineering. So you'll be seeing that up there really soon. Abby is working on that very hard. And we changed our certification to be certified ethical social engineer because that really hits all of our base points right there. So go to the website, check it out. You'll be happy to see all the changes there. Okay, a couple quick housekeeping announcements. If you love the topic of social engineering and security and you are involved, you want to be involved in a family-friendly, I say that because it's really important to us, and a fully above-board legal chat on all things social engineering, you should find the link to our Slack channel. So it's in our show notes. And if you can't find it, hit up Patrick because he's super active on Twitter or LinkedIn, or hit me up and we will get you the link and you can join us there. We have about, I think, 1,500 people in there now every day talking about things like pretexting, phishing, vishing, those who do the job asking for help. We even have a job board in there where we've had about 10 people find employment because of jobs that were posted. So come on in, hang out with us and enjoy the chat there. So I want to invite everyone who's listening to take a moment to go visit innocentlivesfoundation.org. If you're not familiar, our mission over there is to work very closely with law enforcement and helping unmask and uncover people who prey on children, traffic children, and create child abuse material. Really proud of the team over there. We've now worked on almost 500 cases where we were able to help identify child predators or child predator groups and get them over to law enforcement. We're not a vigilante group, so we're not those people you see on Facebook doing those things. We're working with law enforcement to ensure that these kids can stay safe and these guys go to prison. If you want to support us, you can do that either through volunteering or we can always use donations because we are a nonprofit. So check us out at innocentlivesfoundation.org. And last but not least, big shout out to the music at the beginning and the end of this podcast. It is none other than Clutch. If you listen to this podcast even once, you know I am probably the biggest fan in the world of the band, and Neil is part of ILF. So give them some love, follow them, go listen to them on Spotify, go see them in live and tour. That's the best way to really take in their music. But you can check them out at pro-rock.com. Okay, let's get to our topic and our guest. So before you announce a topic, which usually you do, Patrick, I think people who are watching this, they're thinking, there's a third guy here. What are you doing with a third guy in the SE Etc. series? Who is this masked invader of the SE Etc.? He's not even masked, but we're going to go that route for those of you who can't see. Well, we'd like to welcome David Sherry to the SE Etc. podcast. He's the CISO, or the Chief Information Security Officer at Princeton University. He's responsible for developing university policy and strategy regarding matters of information security and leads the overall security mission of the Information Security Office, which sounds like a really huge role for Princeton. He plays a critical role in addressing the larger institutional issues of security policy and practice, data governance, risk assessments, and business continuity, as well as the compliance requirements that span the whole university. Prior to Princeton, David worked as a CISO for Brown University. I see a theme going on here. Okay. But before that, he was vice president. He was vice president at Citizens Bank. So that's a little bit different. And a manager of information security with the USPS. Woo, man, you bounced around all over the place. This is going to be a really exciting conversation. He sits on a number of committees that fall under EDUCAUSE, Higher Education Information Security Council. Shares vast knowledge of information security as a presenter at conferences, guest lecturer. He's also contributed to many publications like Information Security Magazine, Security Currents, and Search Security. And just in case you were wondering, how did he get all of this? Well, he has a bachelor's degree in business management from Providence, an MBA in management from management science from Northern University. He's a certified information security system security professional. How do we just say it? CISSP. Why did I even have to say it? Everyone knows what CISSP is. I don't need to spell it out. And also a CISM. Woo, that's a mouthful. Thank you, David, for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
I am really glad to be here. Also a native Rhode Islander and Irish guy. So Patrick and I have that in common as well.
Oh my. I feel a little outnumbered here as a non-Irish, non-native Rhode Islander. Not even in Rhode Island. So I feel a little out of place. Actually, you're here because of Patrick. I mean, maybe he didn't force you, but he invited you on the show when we got this topic. So before you introduce how that happened, Patrick, please just give us the introduction that what is the topic for today's SE Etc. series podcast?
All right. I think we're going to do that as well. But I think one thing that David also probably left out of his bio is that it works out perfectly that you mentioned that he's the third man in here, because he is very familiar with third man in penalties. He and I are huge hockey fans. So both of us are big Bruins fans, big hockey fans. Third man in. It's always fun to see.
I guess you have to know hockey to know that joke.
Yeah.
Yes, you do. Basically, if two guys are fighting, a third guy cannot jump in. That's a no.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh. That
and
sounds
Patrick
like a good
and I
rule.
have been in the penalty box together a few times, so we know.
Ooh, yeah. Well, one thing I know about the Irish, they can fight.
I don't want to find out. All right. All right. So let's go with this. Right now at Social Engineer, we got 4 different podcasts. We got ones where Chris talks with the thought leaders of all different kinds of industries. Chris talks with CISOs and other executives in the industry. And Chris also has the Doctor is In podcast series with Dr. Abby Maronio talking about the psychology. So when we came up with those 3, we knew that we wanted to have one per month. We're missing one. We're like, let's create the SE Etsy podcast where we can talk about anything we want, anytime we want, or as I like to call it, the dumpster dive of podcasts, because you never know what you're going to get when you start reaching in. And one of the things that I also like to do is to ask anybody out there, what are some ideas that you want us to talk about? So I threw it out on our Slack channel, which you mentioned earlier, that is still going strong even today. And we got an awesome suggestion from our friend Rachel. Rachel threw on there for us, how do you develop a culture of top-down security in an industry? So I thought this would be great. And I remember I asked, can we bring on a guest for this? Because I know somebody that'd be just perfect that has done exactly this kind of thing. Because David and I worked together at Brown University. I also have to give David credit for getting me into the information security industry, because I was a web developer there. And I was very interested in security. And David and I sat very close to each other at Brown. And I would often go into his office and bug him when he was in the middle of busy doing stuff and say, did you think about this? Or how does this work? And all those types of things. And then finally, one day, unfortunately, Brown got attacked and the web server went down. Mm-hmm. We had no idea why. And even worse, it was at like 4:30 on a Friday. So like, this is awful. And I was lucky where David said, go figure it out. You go run it, you figure it out and come back and let me know. And from there, I was hooked. So I had so much fun with that. So that's kind of in a nutshell. I don't know, David, how much of that you remember from that interaction?
Yeah, I think one of the great things about working at Brown was that you were in the cube right outside my office. So we could talk hockey, we could talk security. And you showed an interest back at a time that really the security function and the security professionalism was in its infancy. And between training that you had and internships and helping my team out, man, you just blew past some of the other people that we knew. And I knew that you were on your way. And it's just great to see what you've accomplished, what you're doing right now. And absolutely thrilled that you remember me to get me on this, so I'm happy to be here.
Well, let me say two thank yous. First, thank you to Rachel for such a great idea for an episode, because actually Patrick and I have been very excited about this episode because it's something that we talk about a lot internally here, especially working with some really, really large companies where we need to help implement that. And second, thank you, David, for getting Patrick into the information security field, because if you hadn't, he wouldn't be working right here with us. And I very much love having him as part of the team. So I want to give you a big thank you for getting him into the field, or I would have never met him.
That's true. Yeah.
So okay, we got the story of that and of how you guys met. Sometimes in our industry, we hear a phrase, humans are the weakest link. And yeah, I'm not a big fan of that phrase because it kind of makes it seem like we're saying that everything that's in the network is a problem of the human. But I think, Patrick, you brought something up to me recently. You saw something that kind of changed the camera angle on that quote.
Yeah, I remember somebody else kind of said, like, if your entire network goes down because one employee clicked a link, you have much bigger problems going on. Like one person clicking on a link should not be able to bring everything down. We need to have our redundancy. We need to have our defense in depth. So this was kind of an area that I remember David also being really strongly about and really wanting to get out there and educate people. So I guess we kind of throw it to David as well. What has always been your thought about people being the weakest link?
Yeah. So we've all heard that way too many times. I think some of the people that we serve and we support actually say it because they think that that's what the security team thinks about them. I will tell you that nothing drives me crazier than to hear somebody say that about those that I serve. I work in higher ed, so my job is to serve the teaching and the research and the learning that goes on. And I take that job really seriously. At Princeton, and I think I did this at Brown as well, but we've really codified it and made it programmatic by we call those that we serve our guardians at the gate. We do not call them the weakest link. I think that's negative reinforcement. If you keep telling them that, they're just going to say, well, they know I'm going to make a mistake anyway. I might as well just click on all the links to see what happens. There's no incentive. So by making them guardians at the gate, telling them they're part of the team, they're part of the culture, they're part of the success of the university, and giving them tools, giving them solution, giving them training, giving them swag, it actually works. They like being part of the team. And I'll tell you also, Chris and Patrick, a lot of it's pure psychology. We just get into their heads and tell them that they're part of the team that's making security increase and risk reduced at Princeton University. And they like that. They don't like to be known as something negative. They want to be something that's positive.
But let me play devil's advocate, because first of all, let me set it clear. I am on the same boat as you two, right? We preach this here at SECom that we should not be saying that about humans. But let's say someone's listening to this podcast and they say, but every time we read a report, it's a human who clicked on the phishing email. It's a human who gave over the credentials through the phone. It's a human who made the wire transfer. It's a human who clicked that 2FA code when they shouldn't have clicked it. So if that person who's thinking that way is listening to this podcast, how do we help them see that, yes, you're right, okay, a human did all that, but we still don't like to say the humans are the weakest link, or the worst I've seen is those T-shirts that say there's no patch for human stupidity. How do we still talk to that person who feels that there is a big problem with the humans and still keep the attitude that you have?
Well, I like to answer that, Chris, by, for every time we read one of those articles or hear some podcast about that, I can say, do we have people that click on links at Princeton? Of course we do. Our simulated phishing attacks show us that, and they show us the areas that they're more susceptible to. But I tell them, for every person at the university that clicks on one of those links, we have thousands of people who are doing the right thing by reporting it to our fishbowl, as we call it, that are reporting it into our spam filters, that are sharing it amongst the rest of their team members. They are alerting us. We have, every time we get an attack that does make it through our filters and may end up on the inbox, it's at least a 2,000 to 1 ratio of people who are reporting it versus those who are clicking. And the ones that are clicking, unfortunately, it's not because they're not trained, it's because they're too busy, or they didn't take that extra second. And that's one of the things we focus on as well. So I, once again, try to spin it around and focus on all the positives.
I really like that, David, how you talk about the number of people that report versus the number of people that click, because when we do phishing engagements, that is also the thing that we really like to emphasize. I've told people before that clicking isn't great, but it's also not the worst thing. I would rather have 100 people, 20 people, however many people click and report it than just have a single person click it and not report it. Because when you report that click, now your SOC is aware, your Security Operations Center knows that you're under a phishing attack, and that they can then start taking action. They can shut that down. They can remove the email from other people's inboxes. They can kill the landing page that link is going to. So I really like that point that you make, that there's so many other people that are doing it properly and are reporting it. And I would hope that would be a takeaway to those people that Chris mentioned, that let's really get those people to report it, even if they click it. Even better, don't click it and report it. But if you do notice, like, oh, I shouldn't have clicked that, I think I messed up, even if you gave them your password, report it, because it can be fixed.
Right. And as a preeminent social engineer, the first 5 minutes are the most vulnerable as soon as it hits somebody's inbox. So when our help desk knows they're being inundated over a 180-second time frame about things being reported, we know we got hit a couple of minutes earlier than that. And it's the ones that are acting without thinking too quickly. Maybe they click the link and then they're reporting it. And like you said, we shut it down quick. Detect, respond, recover is a hallmark for us. And that's all part of the methodology here.
So it sounds like it's a really nice culture, because like framing the viewpoint to say, let's look at the positives instead of the negatives. How important for that culture to exist at Princeton is it that you have a security from the top down, or did you go from security from the bottom up? What's the methodology that you follow to get this in place?
Yeah, great question, Chris. And I think someday when I retire, I'm going to hang my hat that I was a culture warrior in terms of security mission. Culture is everything. First of all, Princeton is a culture amongst itself, the Princeton bubble and Princeton Orange and rah-rah Princeton. So have that culture you have to worry about. People told me it's a long time to plug in, to get something going. We're 280 years old. Sometimes it takes 275 years for something to change. I wanted to work against that. It's interesting. Even before I came down to Princeton, I was talking a long time with the CIO before I said yes. And I told him I wanted the mission to be about culture, to change the culture of Princeton so that people would recognize, security is part of their roles, part of their life. And the mission statement that I developed within days after arriving it's the mission of the security office to make security programmatic and cultural at Princeton in order to support the teaching, the research, and the learning. That's it. It doesn't say firewall. It doesn't say IDS. It says nothing about endpoint. It doesn't say anything about architecture. It doesn't say nothing. It's programmatic and cultural. And we say that a lot, myself and my team. Sometimes people start to roll their eyes, but I'll tell you, it has taken hold. It was said by the president at one of the leadership meetings. After I gave something on business email compromised, he said, there's that programmatic and cultural again. I wanted to ask my boss if I could have my annual performance review right then, because the president knows my mission statement.
Did you get it? Did you get your performance review right then?
No, but I still utilize that one. And schools across the country call and they say, tell me how to do this. So we focus on the security team really strongly on changing the culture and changing the thinking about it. But also the other half of that is the programmatic part, making sure that the security function has is plugged into everything from hiring someone to letting someone go to ordering a new network multifunction copier to signing on a new hosting service to creating a new third-party connection to whatever. We want security to have a role somewhere and as early as the process as possible. So the programmatic and cultural go hand in hand. And we are living success that after 7 years this month at the university, we have changed the culture of thinking.
Mm-hmm. So you brought this up because, the cultural change, but you said things sometimes change slow. And we see that a lot in large organizations, that it's like moving a giant ship with a tiny rudder, right? So it doesn't go very fast. Mm-hmm. So what do you do if you're trying to make this cultural change, but someone has come in from an organization and they are high up, they're one of the leaders, but they've come from an organization where they really believe people are the weakest link. How do you go about making that cultural change from the top down so you can still keep that security culture and attitude that you have?
Yeah. So my boss, the CIO, is really responsible for the highest levels, the cabinet level. And then it's up for me for the rest of, though I do get lots of FaceTime with those folks and the trustees who really run the university. So they were anxious to make sure that Princeton is only on the front page of the New York Times for the right reasons. I did not have to use our old friend of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. That just didn't work. They wanted to know what would it take to make sure that Princeton stays off for all those bad reasons. They hear about ransomware. How can we stop ransomware? They hear about social engineering. They hear about network hacks, whatever. And they wanted to know. And we started handling this from through a training and cultural perspective, certainly a gap analysis to make sure that we had no holes in our defense in depth, that managing security in higher ed is not the easiest job, but I'm certainly the most fulfilling. It's like handling security at a small city when you think about what we have. We have the faculty, staff, and students, but places where people live, places where they eat, places where they recreate. We got parents, boosters, donors, sports fans. We got visitors. We got historical markers, a fire station, a police station, a rescue squad. It goes on, retail with PCA. We got everything that you would find in a small town, you find at Princeton. So we had to start figuring out, did we have any gaps that we had to worry about so that we could respond quickly enough? And as we found these and became a partner, both with the cabinet, but those that supported them on the ground, that we weren't the doctors of no, that we were here to help them, things started changing. Hey, should call the security office. They've got some good people over there and they can give us some good wisdom. Hey, call the security office. Not only are they responsive, they're really cool people. So it happened pretty quick. We call it our 0 to 60 moment. Myself and my awareness and training program manager did several keynotes, mostly pre-pandemic, a couple of them on Zoom as well, about Princeton's 0 to 60 moment of taking a security team of one to a larger security team that was supporting the mission of the university. And it seems to have worked. So we did it really fast.
And David, I also remember when you were at Brown, you did a little bit of this as well. Chris was just asking about the top down. Now, how about from the bottom up? How do you empower the people, the everyday cubicle dwellers like I was, that they can come in and talk to you and make them aware? Because I think some of the things I remember you doing were brown bag lunches, having posters. What sorts of things do you do for those people at that level?
Yeah. Well, we do everything we possibly can to get the word out in the way that they need to get the word out. That's from gamification, from movie nights at our local theater where we free pizza and popcorn and soft drinks, and we show hackers or sneakers or war games, and we talk about it afterwards. We'll do anything. But what we have found, and this worked at Brown as well, Patrick, thank you for reminding me of that, is you mentioned brown bags. So a lot of times the best time to do a training, if you want to get people, sometimes is 12 to 1, because that's probably the only open time on their calendar. But if I say, hey, come meet with the security team from 12 to 1 and learn about all the new security aspects of ServiceNow, how many people are going to show up? None, even if we give them lunch. But if you say, hey, come sit with the security team from 12 to 1 to learn how to protect your home network, to learn how to teach your kids about safe internet usage, to learn what you should do in advance of a possible identity theft. We just did about developing your own personal business continuity plan. We find that if you're teaching them about something that's going to hit them personally or their family personally, we get standing room only. Mm-hmm. And we feel, it's my thought, and I believe my philosophy is correct because I've seen it in action, that if they're thinking about security from 5 p.m. to 8 a.m. at home, they're going to think about security from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And it makes our risk go down and our security go up because they've had that mindset. So informing them that security is personal, it impacts your family, it impacts yourself, giving them training on all sorts of aspects of personal security has really brought more people to the security team. You know, the pizza and the cookies help, but I think it's the content. And I've got a terrific program manager who is just a terrific presenter and speaks at the appropriate level. So when she's going to be on the docket, people come.
It sounds to me like what you've done is you've made your security program very people-centric. Mm-hmm. You know, like Absolutely. You just talked to before from the top down, you're trying to get those leaders to make sure they understand that they need to treat people right. From the bottom up, you're trying to get those people to feel comfortable to talk to the people above them, but also giving them something they can make personal. Yeah. So instead of saying humans are the weakest link, you're treating humans like the most valued possession inside of Princeton.
Yeah. Believe it or not, so we try to get in front of where freshmen move in. So the day they pick up their key and they're going to go, they can come and get some swag and a handful of Swedish fish and learn about the security team. Princeton does a thing called Flu Fest where everybody gets their flu shots and there's different booths to visit. We have Be Safe at Princeton Day, all these different things. We actually had a complaint. This is a badge of honor that I'll take from the rest of my career. When we were at one of the health benefits fairs or Flu Fest, HR came over and said, "You're causing congestion because too many people are at your table." And I'm like, okay, I'll take that one. We were doing a thing called the Cyber Wheel of Fortune where people would spin it and it would say internet security, and we'd ask them a question. If they got it right, they got a box of Swedish fish. And there were so many people around our table, the queue was backing up. I'm like, we'll speed it up, but wow, I can't get a better badge of honor than that.
Said no security guy ever to have a queue at their table, right? So you may be you should wear that. You should put that on your LinkedIn profile, right? Had queue at my table, right? That never happens.
Yeah. David, another question I have for you is about empowerment. So we can certainly teach people about security from the top down. We can teach people about security from the bottom up. But there's so many times that I think people are afraid to report things. One story that I like to tell people is another company that I worked at after Brown, where I was always a part of the onboarding security training. And part of that security training that we would always tell people on day one was that you needed to wear your company badge publicly while you were inside the building. And if you don't see somebody wearing their badge, we want you to stop them and ask for it. And there's a great story that comes from that where somebody left that training one day and right down the hallway, they saw a person walking toward them and they could not see their badge. And they stopped them and said, "Can I see your badge?" And the person pulled it out. It was the CEO. And the CEO of the company was so happy with that. He then sent an email to the entire company. Said, "This new person stopped me in the hallway because I was wrongly not wearing my badge publicly. He asked me to see it and I showed it. I want everybody in the company to do that. I am the CEO. I am telling you this person did it right. I want you to do it." And Chris can probably attest to this as well. One of the reasons that we are often so successful as social engineers is because we take advantage of people that are afraid to stop you, that are afraid to question you, that they don't necessarily feel empowered, because all too often when you stop somebody, they're like, "Who are you to question me?" So is that something that you also deal with in order to empower people to do the right thing with security?
Yeah, well, first of all, that's an awesome story.
That is an awesome story.
That is terrific. And kudos to that CEO. Yeah. Because that could have gone south really. That could have been a third man in really fast.
Yeah.
So, in higher ed, it's a little bit different, right? We're not here looking at our stock price. We're not worried about shareholders. We're not worried about the next business quarter. it's a little bit different from an atmosphere, and that's one of the reasons why I love working in higher ed, and especially at Princeton University. So none of our actions for our simulated fish, for any of our social engineering exercises, any of our scanning, none of it is punitive. It's all educational in nature. When someone clicks one of our simulated fish attacks, they get a pop-up educational screen. Hey, here's what you missed. Let's do better the next time. And so are they now not afraid to click every link? No, we see the opposite. We see that once someone gets that once, they are really more vigilant and more diligent on looking at the links that come in. We have a technology community. Higher ed is very decentralized. So you've got central IT. I've got a really good handle on those folks. And I have somewhat the authority and the ability to say, thou shalt do this and thou shalt not do that to them. The rest of it, these big academic areas, the library, facilities, athletics, oh my gosh, the IT stack that they have. We try to get to them through their local IT staff. And we have a monthly gathering of IT staff that come and learn about what's coming up, the big projects, maybe big changes, what's going on with ServiceNow, are we expanding our endpoint, whatever. And I take those opportunities to recognize and call out the people who are doing a good job. And they like going back and telling their people they're doing a good job, and security office tells you to do a good job. If for some reason we have to go to a department and say, yeah, we did a simulated phishing attack and you guys failed 42% of the time, it's behind closed doors, it's educational. It's giving them a pat on the back and say, hey, we'll see you the next time. And so people aren't afraid to report a phish, let us know when something's wary. Business email compromise is huge here. Oh my gosh. But people recognize that, they want to report those to us as well. I also tell them this is another psychology thing. And you as social engineers know this, responding to the business email compromise on the first time doesn't really do anything. There's no malicious content. You didn't give away your ID and your password. And because we're so busy and so stressed and you want to please your boss, someone responds to that first one. I don't chastise them. I try to give them a pep talk. It's when the thing comes back and says, I forgot to get a present for my nephew's bar mitzvah. Can you buy me a $500 eBay card? I want them to say, oh my gosh, I failed that. I got to tell David. And that we can start going through the systems to see if, other people have it and stop pulling it out of their boxes or what have you. So we've tried to create an environment that they're not afraid of us. They're not afraid of reporting something. We try to give them kudos when necessary and maybe some counsel behind the scenes when necessary as well.
I really love this. To kind of juxtapose that, we had a client once we worked with that we were doing VISHING work. And after we started, we had a number of our vishers that work with Patrick come back to us and say, hey, guys, I got some concerns. I would get somebody on the phone. They would know it was a test, and they would say, please don't report me, because if you report me, I'm getting fired. And we actually stopped the work. We stopped the work. We got on the phone with the point of contact. We said, please tell me this isn't true. And they said, no, we fire people for failing.
Ooh, okay.
So we stopped the work and we said, okay, we're gonna revamp the whole program. We said, we're not doing vishing. I go, because let me tell you, I showed him statistics and I said, our average success ratio on a month one client is 71%.
Ooh, okay.
I said, so are you ready to get rid of 71% of your staff next month? Because I'm guaranteeing you, if you do, the next 71% you hire will fail that next month and you will have a nonstop revolving door. And they went, we didn't think of it that way. And I'm like, so let's start talking about this. And then one of the failures that we had was one of the top C-level people fell for it. So we said, okay, are you going to march in and get rid of that guy? And they're like, no. And I'm like, so we had this whole discussion and we tried so hard. And, eventually we really made a lot of change there because of what you were just saying is like, we try to paint that picture of what you just said. Like, wouldn't you feel better if you had people running into your office to tell you, I just clicked on this fish, help save the company, as opposed to trying to hide it because they're so afraid of losing their employment, which is what they're going to do. If they failed, they're going to hide it because I don't want to get fired. Yeah. So maybe I won't get caught if I just bury it, Yeah. And that was always so I loved the way you approach it because that seems like you are really putting people first in your process.
And understand, no one would get fired at Princeton for clicking on a link the first time. There are pockets of centralized IT where some of the support personnel have some really privileged access.
Right.
So doing well on simulated phishing tests certainly are part of their performance review.
Yep.
Because it has to be. We use our friends from the outside to attack us periodically, and that's the people that they go after. Right. They're not going. Maybe with a phishing test, they're going to go after the executive assistant for one of the deans, but they're going after the people who have access to the databases and access to the email system. So those people, a little bit more heightened scrutiny, but they understand it has to be because of the level of privilege that they have.
Yeah, people often will ask, like Patrick and I, like, so you have this thing where you're really against firing people. Like, so what happens if someone just continually fails? And I'm like, no, don't get me wrong. If someone doesn't care about your organization and they're flippant about security and they're flippant about not paying attention to the rules, they're a danger. They're a threat to the other 1,000 people that do care, or 10,000 or 100,000, right? So yes, you have to take precaution, but 100% what you said. First time they fail for it, so that should be like, okay, let's take you aside. Let's help train you. Let's build you up. Let's see if this is a something you just don't care about, or is this something that we can fix, right?
Yeah. I had a coworker meet me at the coffee pot just about a month ago. 2-part story with the same coworker. And I walked in and they said, oh man, it's your fault that I don't have a perfect record anymore. And I said, a perfect record in what? And they said, I clicked on one of your links and I got your educational thing. And it's your fault that I'm not at 100%. I'm now at 1 out of 16 or something like that. And I'm like, okay, all right. I said, I think it's my fault. But this person a couple of weeks ago walked in on a conversation with me and a few of my training and awareness people and just said, I want you to know that I scrutinize every email that comes into my inbox now. Like, they went from being a little upset that it was my fault that they clicked on it to now being on a heightened state of awareness before. They hover to discover before they start clicking on links. So a real success story in that regard, changed their mindset.
And David, for anybody listening here who's looking to start doing these types of things, because I think when we talk about testing the population, people start to understand that it works and that people are going to learn from those types of things. Just like you were just saying, somebody clicked once out of 16 and from then on they were diligent about that. But what is your thought about an untested population? Should you jump right into testing, or do you think you need to start with education before you test?
2-part answer to that, Patrick. So first of all, it's hard to mandate anything in higher ed. Certainly if there's a law behind it, like PCI, yeah. But Princeton's model for things like this is opt-in. We usually, central IT goes first. Great partners with the library, with HR, with finance and treasury, they jump on. And then it's people saying, yeah, I want my department to be part of it, and especially academic areas. So we have them say, yeah, I'd like to be part of this simulated phishing program that you folks have started. Before we do that, we send a message about why we're doing it, what the importance of it is, and give them links to all sorts of self-help and video training that my program managers put together. 5 minutes or less about how to spot a phish, what to do if it happens, how to notify, how to report. So it's up to them if they want to take it or not. But they do get notified in advance through either the department chair, the dean of the area they're in, department manager, or whatever. This is going to be coming. We're not going to tell you when. Here's your opportunity to get better at that. Here's what's going to happen if you fail. So it's not mandatory training, but we do see that when we send one of these out over the next week or so, our analytics show us that people are visiting our fishbowl site, learning how to spot it, learning what to do. And that goes a long way. And usually the first one that we send out has maybe our friends at Amazon attached to it. And a lot of people fail on that one. And then we go in and we talk to them. So we had our baseline one. You guys didn't do very good on it. Here's what's going to happen going forward. And from there, we see the trend line going down. So, yeah. So we do offer it. Not everybody takes advantage of it. It'd be nice to know if the ones that clicked are the ones that didn't, but I'm not going to go that deep.
Thank you so much, David. Hey, we got a question in closing. Okay. What are you reading right now? What kind of books do you have going on?
Yeah, so I'm supposed to say Social Engineering by Chris Hadnagy. That was in my library along with, The Art of Invisibility and
Thank you.
Hacking Exposed Volume 7 or 8. I always have a little bit of everything going on. I will tell you that I read my Bible every day. That keeps me grounded, keeps me focused. We have stressful jobs in security that keeps me at peace, so that's helpful. I like reading books by peers. So I'm reading Project Zero Trust from George Finney, who's the CISO at Southern Methodist University. I like reading books by local Princeton people. So I'm reading Race After Technology by Professor Ruha Benjamin. That's all about algorithms built into some of the technologies we use and how they could possibly be racist and prejudiced. Really fascinating. I'm rereading for the second time because I think we all should read it periodically. This is How They Tell Me the World Ends by Nicole Perlroth, another Princeton grad. And then just for fun, I love reading Revolutionary War stuff. And I'm reading a book about a group of soldier mariners from Marblehead, Massachusetts, who rode Washington across the Delaware. I live 4 miles from that point. So I like going down to that park and visualizing what went on that Christmas day so long ago and knowing guys from Massachusetts helped them out.
What's the name of that book?
That one's called The Indispensables. Yep, there's a subtitle to it, but The Indispensables, I think it's by another good Irishman, Patrick O'Donnell. Yeah, and how every time Washington won some kind of battle, it seems like guys from Marblehead happen to be there helping them.
Yeah. We put all these books in our show notes because we've had people come in and recommend science fiction books, technological, whatever, everything. And we've been running a book list now for the last 13 years doing this. Yeah. And I can't tell you how many people have emailed in or sent messages in saying that their reading list is based off of our guests. So cool, huh? yeah, it's kind of cool. And we started doing this just for fun because when I had guests on originally, I wanted to know, hey, give me a book recommendation because I want to learn from you. Like if you read it and I have you on the show because I want to learn from you, give me something to read. And I just started keeping it on the show and people were going, that's a great recommendation. I love that book. And so we just kept doing it.
And if you work in higher ed, you're never shy about getting a book. Barton Gellman, Dark Mirror, about his dealings with Snowden, Princeton guy. I'm reading a book, I think it's called Connected in Isolation by Professor Esther Hadnagy about, the data when we were in COVID about who was doing what and why and what the data shows in terms of usage and impact on society and sociological stuff. So there's always 2 books a month that's coming out at a university. So we're never at a depth of not having books.
Yeah, you're not at a shortage. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I when I'm interviewing someone, the last question I ask them, what's the last good book you read? And I don't care what they say. I just want them to light up and have some, even if it was 10 years ago, I want them to remember it. The ones that say, oh, not so sure. I'm like, ooh.
I don't read. Right.
That's not the type of person I want on my staff.
Yeah. So, David, if people want to interact with you or follow you, what's the best method for them to do that?
Well, certainly hit me up on LinkedIn. There's a bunch of David Sherrys, but only one at Princeton. Follow me on Twitter at CISO at Princeton. And, I'm not going to be afraid. DS39 at Princeton University gets right directly into my inbox. I love talking security, love helping people, try to mentor and pay it forward as much as I can, time permitting. And just love to keep the conversation going. We're all one big happy family. We really are.
And everyone who's listening, we'll put the links to his social media in the show notes. So if you're interested in interacting with David, you can follow. David, I can't thank you enough for coming on, sharing your extensive knowledge for all the years you have and all the wonderful points. I really didn't know what to expect. I mean, I kind of knew with Patrick, he talks about you like I thought you were going to float in and walk on water. but I was just so happy to hear your messaging about how people-centric you are and how human-centric you are. It's really heartwarming, and I know it will help a lot of people listening to the show. So thank you so much for coming on.
I'm really happy to have been here. I think you folks should send me a bill because this was kind of like therapy.
We can do that. Sure.
Yeah, we'll do that. Hey, Patrick, tell everyone, what are we doing next month? What are we talking about next month?
Hey, I think next month, one of the things that we were looking forward to was what might be the history of vishing? Like, where does vishing, the voice phishing, come from? And maybe even talk to some people that were early adopters of vishing, because there's so many different stories out there about some of these things. So it might be fun to get some stories and talk about where it comes from.
Well, thanks for joining us this month, everyone, and we'll see you next month. See you.